The champagne glass shattered against the marble floor of the penthouse suite, crystal shards scattering like frozen tears across the expensive Italian tiles. Victoria Chen stood in her designer heels, her perfectly manicured hand still trembling from the force of her throw, staring at the man she had once promised to love forever. Marcus Chen, dressed in his modest security guard uniform with his name badge slightly crooked, didn't flinch. He had grown accustomed to her contempt, to the way her eyes skimmed over him like he was part of the furniture, invisible and insignificant. What Victoria didn't know as she looked at him with barely concealed disgust was that the quiet man standing before her, the husband she introduced to her corporate friends as just security, had once commanded entire military operations that saved thousands of lives. The contrast between them had become unbearable for Victoria. She was the youngest CEO of Chen Industries, a tech empire her father had built from nothing, and she wore her success like armor. Every morning she left their modest apartment in tailored suits that cost more than Marcus made in a month, her hair perfectly styled, her confidence radiating from every pore. And every morning Marcus would kiss her goodbye before heading to his shift at the downtown office complex, standing for 12 hours watching security monitors and checking identification badges. To Victoria, it was an embarrassment. To Marcus, it was penance for a past he was trying to forget. Their marriage had begun differently, 7 years ago, when Victoria was still climbing the corporate ladder and Marcus was transitioning out of a career he never discussed. Back then, she had been drawn to his quiet strength, the way he seemed to carry wisdom beyond his years, the gentleness in his hands that suggested they had once done far more than open doors. But as her star rose and his remained grounded, her love had curdled into resentment. She stopped inviting him to company events. She stopped wearing her wedding ring to important meetings. She stopped seeing him at all, really, looking through him instead, as if he were a ghost haunting the life she wanted to live alone. If you believe in the power of second chances, in the importance of seeing beyond surface appearances, and recognizing the worth in every human being regardless of their job title, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and subscribe to our channel. Your support means everything, and helps us bring more meaningful stories to life. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening when Victoria hosted a dinner party for her board members at their apartment. Marcus had worked a double shift and arrived home exhausted, his uniform wrinkled, his eyes heavy with fatigue. As he entered through the kitchen door, he heard Victoria's laugh, bright and performative, floating from the dining room. One of the board members, a silver-haired man named Richard, asked about her husband, and Marcus paused, waiting to hear how she would respond. Victoria's voice was light, dismissive. She told them she was essentially single, that her husband was just a security guard who worked nights, nothing special, nothing worth mentioning. The words landed like bullets in Marcus's chest, each one finding its mark with devastating accuracy. That night, after the guests had left and Victoria was removing her jewelry in the bathroom, Marcus sat on the edge of their bed and made a decision. He had spent 7 years trying to be small for her, trying to fade into the background of her ambitious life, hoping that his love would be enough. But love, he had learned, cannot survive in soil poisoned by contempt. He thought about telling her the truth, about opening the locked box in the back of his closet that contained his medals, his commendations, the photographs of him in uniform standing with presidents and generals. He thought about explaining that he had chosen to become a security guard not because he lacked ambition or capability, but because after spending 15 years in special operations, after leading missions in the darkest corners of the world, after making impossible decisions that cost him pieces of his soul, he wanted simplicity. He wanted peace. He wanted to protect people without having to carry a weapon or make life or death choices. But he knew Victoria wouldn't understand. She measured worth in promotions and profit margins, not in the quiet dignity of honest work. The transformation began 2 weeks later when Marcus's past came looking for him. A terrorist threat had been made against Chen Industries, specifically targeting Victoria during an upcoming international conference. The FBI arrived at Marcus's security post, and when they addressed him as Colonel Chen, his co-workers' jaws dropped. Within hours, he was pulled into a classified briefing, his expertise requested by Homeland Security. The threat was credible, sophisticated, and Marcus recognized the signature tactics of a group he had once dismantled overseas. They wanted revenge, and they had chosen Victoria as their target, unaware that her forgotten husband was the very man who had destroyed their operations years ago. Marcus didn't tell Victoria about the threat. Instead, he requested leave from his security job and began working behind the scenes, coordinating with federal agencies, analyzing intelligence, planning countermeasures. He moved through the shadows of her life, protecting her from dangers she couldn't even imagine, while she continued to treat him like an inconvenience. The night of the conference arrived, and Victoria stood on stage in a glittering ballroom, delivering her keynote speech to hundreds of industry leaders. She spoke about innovation, about breaking barriers, about the importance of surrounding yourself with excellence. In the back of the room, Marcus stood in his security uniform, positioned near the exit, watching not her but the crowd, his trained eyes scanning for threats, his earpiece connected to a tactical team stationed throughout the building. The attack came swiftly, a coordinated attempt to breach the building's security systems and cause chaos. But Marcus had anticipated every move, had planned for every contingency. Within minutes, the threat was neutralized, the perpetrators apprehended, and the conference attendees remained completely unaware that anything had happened. Victoria finished her speech to thunderous applause, basking in the admiration of her peers, while Marcus slipped out through the service entrance, his job complete. The truth emerged the following morning when the FBI director personally called Victoria to commend her husband's heroism and explain that Colonel Marcus Chen had saved not only her life but potentially hundreds of others. Confused and shaken, Victoria demanded to know what they were talking about, insisted there must be some mistake. But there was no mistake. That afternoon, when Marcus returned home from a debriefing, Victoria was waiting for him, surrounded by news articles she had frantically printed from the internet, stories about a decorated special operations officer who had received the Medal of Honor, who had testified before Congress, who had been offered positions at the highest levels of national security and turned them all down to live a quiet life. She looked at him differently then, truly looked at him, perhaps for the first time in years, and what she saw broke her heart. Not because he was someone important, someone impressive by her standards, but because she realized she had been so blinded by her own definitions of success that she had failed to see the extraordinary man she had married. Marcus had never needed titles or recognition. His strength had never come from corner offices or executive positions. He had carried his worth quietly, had chosen a humble path deliberately, had loved her without condition, even as she had systematically dismantled his dignity. If this story has touched your heart, if it reminded you to look deeper and appreciate the people in your life for who they truly are rather than what they appear to be, please show your support by liking this video and leaving a comment below. Share it with someone who needs to hear this message today. Victoria's apology came in tears and broken words, but Marcus gently stopped her. He explained that he didn't need her to be sorry, didn't need her to suddenly see him as valuable because of his past accomplishments. What he needed was for her to understand that every person, regardless of their job or status, carries stories and strength and worth that cannot be measured by society's shallow standards. He told her about the security guards he worked with, single mothers and veterans and immigrants, each one fighting their own battles with dignity and grace. He told her that when he checked identification badges and monitored cameras, he wasn't wasting his potential but honoring a choice to live with integrity and purpose. Before we reach the end of this story, please take a moment to leave a comment sharing what this story meant to you. Your words create a community of kindness that inspires us all. The ending of their story wasn't about Victoria suddenly respecting Marcus because she learned he was a decorated war hero. It was about something far more profound. She began the hard work of examining her own values, of confronting the ways she had allowed corporate culture to poison her humanity. She started greeting the security guards at her building by name, asking about their families, seeing them as the complete human beings they had always been. She learned that true strength is often quiet, that real success is measured in character rather than climbing, and that the most important battles are often fought by people the world overlooks. And Marcus, patient Marcus, gave her the space to grow, to change, to become someone worthy not of his impressive past, but of his beautiful, humble present. They rebuilt their marriage slowly, piece by piece, founded this time not on romance or ambition, but on mutual respect and the profound understanding that we are all so much more than what we appear to be on the surface.